What's going on, everyone? Bran here from Bloody Breakdown, and if you're a fan of the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise, you're really going to love this one. So add I Know What You Did Last Summer to the list of, I guess we'll say, successful IPs that are going to be brought back after, especially within the genre that we look at, especially after seeing the success in Halloween and Scream again, and some others as well, especially with Scream. I don't think we have to talk about the similarities between those films and even coming out in the same era, one definitely being a byproduct of the other. But yeah, it's very interesting to see that, according to Deadline, I Know What You Did Last Summer sequel in works at Sony, with Jennifer Caitlin Robinson directing, Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. in talks to return. So, once again, if you're a fan of the franchise, I thought the first one was, I mean, let's be real. There, the 90s was littered with Scream-inspired teen slasher flicks. We could bring a lot of them up. Not just I Know What You Did Last Summer, but Urban Legend, The Faculty, even later on into the early 2000s with things like Valentine. But I think they definitely saw the success that the Scream franchise is having now with that relaunch, and it's definitely a good idea, to be honest with you. There are so many fans of this franchise specifically out here that are those crossover fans with Scream and definitely would check something like this out. So not only are we going to get a sequel, and let's call it what it is, a legacy sequel, I think that they're probably going to keep the first two films in in this trilogy so far canon with this. Maybe I'm wrong about that. At least the first one for sure. But I think they'll probably keep those first two films in canon, especially if Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. return. Kind of just feels right at that point, I would assume. Definitely, I am all on board with ignoring that third film forever, in perpetuity. If we can do that, thumbs up. But yeah, it's, a legacy sequel, much in the same vein that we've seen recently with films like Halloween, Scream, like I had mentioned earlier. I think that's what we're going to be looking at here. But I think, honestly, if you don't get some of those returning characters to come back, you could end up with something potentially like that I Know What You Did Last Summer TV show that they aired. I forget which streaming service it was available on. I think I made it maybe 20 minutes into the first episode before I bailed, like, nah, not for me. So I think you kind of need that hook to kind of level the story to its roots in the same way they did with Scream in 2022. But we'll go on, we'll read the article here because there's a lot of exciting news in it. And once again, the first sentence here: following the successful relaunch of Scream, Sony Pictures is looking to blow new life into its own slasher franchise, as sources tell Deadline that Jennifer Caitlin Robinson has been tapped to direct a sequel to I Know What You Did Last Summer, with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. in talks to reprise their roles. Which, once again, is one of the more exciting things for me, quite frankly. It's one of those franchises that I don't think ever really got its due in a lot of ways, and definitely went out on a sour note with that bullshit called I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. So it goes on to say, insiders say the project is in early development and that Neil H. Moritz is in talks to return as producer. And if you don't know, he did produce, I know for sure the original two. I think like a metric fuck ton of those Fast and the Furious movies. Big time producer. And also a guy who understands the franchise. So it also says with Lee McKendrick on board to write the script. So we already have names here. We have producers, we have directors, we have script writers, and this thing is in the early stages of development. So this isn't, any kind of is this going to get off the ground or not? Like the last video I did with Blair Witch, like this thing is already off the ground and it is moving. Sony had no comment on the project. Interestingly enough, I guess not at this early juncture. It says, while McKendrick is pinning the pick, the idea for the new film came from Robinson and McKendrick, who blew away studio execs when they pitched this idea for a sequel last fall. Not surprisingly, honestly, given that specific time frame, especially given the recent success of the Scream franchise. Hey, you took the thought right out of my mind there and put it right into the article. That film was recently relaunched with original cast members returning, and the idea of bringing back original cast members to draw in old school fans while also adding fresh faces to the relaunch. Or to relaunch the series was too good for the studio to pass up. So yeah, I think we're looking at exactly like I said. You're looking at another Halloween 2018 where you had Jamie Lee, but it also brought in all these new characters with her daughter and granddaughter and their supporting characters. Or in Scream, where you bring back Nev and David and Courtney, but you also have an entire fresh new cast for the story to unfold on. So yeah, I think that's what we're looking at here. Hopefully they are able to get Hewitt and Prince Jr. back, because I mean, I don't know, it just kind of it doesn't really feel like that franchise to just go back in after all this time and not really have any familiar faces or the faces of the franchise, even though you can have that, quote unquote torch passing moment. I really do think it's kind of integral to get those two cast members specifically back here. Another big factor was the recent success of Robinson's Netflix pick Do Revenge, which was lauded for its throwbacks to late 90s picks like Cruel Intentions, and was something execs knew Robinson could tap into when developing the new story. So I like that. I like where they're going with that. Kind of having an idea for the era, especially with these types of this genre and I guess similar genres from that era. So it says Sony also saw it important to not reboot the franchise but do a sort of passing of the torch type sequel, which once again kind of goes into what we all, I think, at least in the people I've talked to, are kind of feeling what this thing's going to be, where original cast members are brought back as a new generation cast members are added to the ensemble, similar to films like Scream or Creed. Yeah, once again, I kind of feel like a lot of this goes without saying. I couldn't believe people were actually questioning whether this would be that type of film or not. I think they're going to go with what's working. You're not going to look at the success of something like Scream and not try to follow that same blueprint. I mean, they've pretty much already done it up until this point. It'd be a weird time to deviate, I think. So yeah, essentially it just kind of goes on to talk about some of the people who are going into more detail about the people involved in the project, but generally overall, that's what we're looking at. That's kind of where we are. So yeah, it's kind of an exciting time for a lot of us 90s kids. Now it's kind of our turn to see a lot of the stuff that we didn't watch reruns of, or we didn't rent these things from the video store or whatever as old relics that came before us. We're seeing the stuff that we literally went to the theaters to see, grew up on, kind of manifesting its way back on to the screen now, given a lot of this newfound nostalgia that is for some reason popular now. A lot of times this used to get you made fun of. Now a lot of this stuff being popular, it blows my fucking mind. But that's neither here nor there, folks. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you all think about I Know What You Did Last Summer, Legacy sequel being in the works over at Sony, some returning cast members there, and yeah. Do all the YouTube stuff. Leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that jazz. And yeah, check the description section. There's some links there to follow me on various social media and support the channel if you choose to do so. So, with that said, I'm Bran, and that's the bloody breakdown on the I Know What You Did Last Summer Legacy sequel.